Liver transplant is considered as the most complex operation on this world.
What happens when a patient waits too long to get this surgery?
In our country itself, we are doing about 3 to 5,000 transplants in a year.
How does the live donor liver transplantation works?
So the Indian law does not allow any friend or a neighbor to be a donor.
Who are patients who require emergency transplants?
India actually performs the maximum number of donor liver transplants in the world.
So how safe is the liver transplantation?
What is required is 1/4 of the liver.
Liver transplant is an extremely dangerous surgery.
Paracetamol poisoning is less common in our country, but what is very common is yellow phosphorus poisoning.
How long is the recovery process for the donor?
So the liver regenerates quite fast in the first 2 weeks.
So what does Lilavati Hospital makes a perfect destination for liver transplants? Welcome to Lilavati Hospital podcast series, where meaningful conversations meet science, where we bring you stories, evidence, science, and breakthroughs which are changing the future of healthcare. Liver is one of the organs which is able to regenerate. But when a severe liver disease strikes, liver transplant is the only path to survival. Thanks to many advances in healthcare, liver transplant has evolved from a very complex procedure to a life-saving option to thousands of patients. Thank you, Dr. Vibha, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you with. So, ma'am, starting with the very first question. What are the common reasons why a person or a patient may need a liver transplant?
So as you rightly said, liver transplant is a life-saving operation, and it is broadly indicated in 3 groups of patients. Amongst the various innumerable list, I would like to bring to notice the 3 commonest causes why a patient might need transplant. So the commonest indication is a patient having cirrhosis of liver or chronic liver disease, what is commonly known to a layman, where the etiology of cirrhosis could be anything, the common being alcohol-related liver disease or non-alcohol-related liver disease, what we now label as metabolic dysfunction-associated steatotic liver disease, wherein the common terminology is fatty liver disease going on to develop cirrhosis. The other indications of transplant wherein there is cirrhosis is a hepatitis B or hepatitis C related cirrhosis where they decompensate and need transplant. I would be dealing with the decompensation in the questions to come in the next sequence, but suffice it to say that any patient with chronic liver disease who decompensates either because of alcohol or because of non-alcohol related liver disease, hepatitis B or C. And one of the common indication in kids and neonates is congenital malformation, what is known as biliary atresia.
That's actually something, ma'am, most people don't realize what liver disease can lead to, and they might require a liver transplant. So, ma'am, what are the indications for it?
So the other indication which I have to add on to chronic liver disease is patients who present in an emergency with acute liver failure. In our country, as against West, paracetamol overdose or poisoning is less common, but what we commonly see is hepatitis A and E related acute liver failure, which happens mostly because of contaminated water. It is more frequently seen in monsoon season. Most of these patients, they will recover, but there are a subset of patients who would not recover with medical treatment and they need emergency liver transplant. The other category of patients who need transplant is in a patient with cirrhosis when they have hepatocellular carcinoma. So these patients, they have liver cancer and they have cirrhosis. And there are a group of patients who cannot undergo resection and they land up having liver transplant.
So, knowing the indications now, ma'am, there must be a set of investigations you must suggest the patient before advising the liver transplant. So, can you please help us with it?
So, very simple investigation to know that a patient is suffering from liver disease starts with blood tests. Blood tests are the common blood count, the liver function test, the kidney function test, and an ultrasound of abdomen. Actually, these basic investigations more or less clinches the diagnosis that the patient has cirrhosis of liver, or if there is any tumor sitting in the liver, and also we can have severity of disease based on the blood test alone. Once we find that there is a cirrhosis of liver on these tests, then we go on to do a endoscopy, wherein we can judge the amount of portal hypertension which these patients suffer from, and if required, some endotherapy can also be done. CT scan is done to categorize the liver disease and to see whether the blood vessels which are supplying the liver, they are okay or not, or if there is any tumor sitting in the liver.
So definitely, ma'am, investigations and detection do influence the outcome of the liver transplant.
Right.
So, ma'am, forwarding with it, you mentioned about the severity of the diseases. So, is there any method or any score which helps you understand a patient does require a liver transplant now?
So we do have scoring systems in place which can guide the clinicians as well as the patients to understand that where they stand as far as severity of disease is concerned. So based on the blood test, we have what is known as Child-Pugh score or CTP score, and we have a MELD score which is model for end stage liver disease in adults, and a PELD score which is pediatric end stage liver disease for pediatric patients. So it takes into consideration the serum bilirubin, the serum creatinine, and these patients are coagulopathic because the liver produces the coagulation factors. So we measure the prothrombin time or INR, and we also see the sodium levels. So based on these 3-4 parameters, there is a score. Any patient with a score above 15, that is a MELD score above 15, there is an indication for liver transplant. And as the score goes up, the severity of disease goes up, and the severity of disease in the sense that if they do not have transplant, the chances of them not surviving 1 year goes high. So that is how we can guide the patients, and any physician treating such patients, they can come to know when to suggest transplant to these patients. Having said that, there are some exceptions to these scoring systems as well.
So, ma'am, since you mentioned because of the fear of surgeries and this complex procedures, people often delay their treatment or even getting the surgery done. So, is there any ideal timeline to get the liver transplant? And if it is, what happens when a patient waits too long to get this surgery?
So, when the patients have cirrhosis of liver and they have decompensation, so I would like to elaborate as to what is decompensation. So, decompensated cirrhosis is where patients have signs of liver failure, and there are 5 major signs. One is developing jaundice, that is yellowness of the eyes and urine, or patients have water retention, there is swelling of the feet, there is swelling of the tummy, that is water collection in the tummy, or they may have blood vomiting or passing blood in the stool. They can go into encephalopathy, which is known as hepatic coma, because liver is the organ which detoxifies everything, and if the liver is at fault, the ammonia collects and it builds up and affects the brain. So the confusion and mentation is affected. Patients go into different grades of encephalopathy. They can also present with repeated episodes of fever because patient's immune status is low, the proteins are low, and they can have febrile episodes. They can have infection in the fluid which collects in the tummy. So these are the signs of decompensation which one should take as a guide, that this is the time transplant should be talked about. And if the patients are referred on time for transplant, the results are best. The key to outcome, a good outcome of transplant, is timely referral. If they are not referred on time, every time a patient has a decompensation, their general status comes down. And this is something which I want to spread to the public and to the physicians, that success of transplant lies in timely referral.
Definitely, ma'am, this message will definitely get across the audience to get not ignore the warning signs and get the surgery needed if needed at the right time possible. So ma'am, is there any eligibility criteria for liver transplant, and are there any exceptions to it also?
So eligibility, many of the patients, they will be covered by the MELD score, but there are MELD exceptions, like a person developing fluid in the tummy, what we know as ascites, is actually not covered in the MELD score. Person developing fluid in the chest, which is known as hydrothorax, it is not included in the scoring system. A person developing solid tumor in the liver, what we know as hepatocellular carcinoma, is not covered in the MELD score. So there are exception points which are given to patients developing such symptoms. Even encephalopathy is not covered in the MELD. So there is a list of MELD exceptions, and it is considered into the indications for transplant. So any patient with fluid in the chest, fluid in the tummy, or having a tumor, they are given exception points and they become eligible for transplant.
Doctor, that is a very insightful information we have right now. So doctor, who are patients who require emergency transplants?
So coming to patients who present with acute liver failure or what we know as fulminant hepatic failure, they are a small subset of patients, but they are very important. It is very important that any clinician who is treating a patient with acute liver failure, whatever is the cause, it could be hepatitis A or hepatitis E related acute liver failure, or it could be because of drugs like antitubercular drugs, or it could be because of poisoning. Paracetamol poisoning is less common in our country, but what is very common is yellow phosphorus poisoning. And you'll be surprised to know that what is known as ratol poisoning is rampantly being done in some of the communities. And as this medicine is available over the counter, patients are taking for suicidal purposes. We have young individuals coming with poisoning, and they present with a triad of symptoms. They present with jaundice, they present with coagulopathy, that is bleeding tendency, and they also land up with encephalopathy. And these patients, they should ideally be treated in a center where you have transplant facility, because they deteriorate very fast, and once they deteriorate, there is no scope of shifting them from one hospital to the other. So it is important for physicians who are dealing with such patients to treat them in a center or refer them early on to a center where transplant facility is available. Because once they fulfill criteria for emergency transplant, we should be geared up to offer that as a life-saving procedure.
Ma'am, India performs many live donor liver transplantations. So can you explain how does the live donor liver transplantation works?
So we have ideally two kinds of donors. It could be either a diseased or a brain dead donor or a living donor. India actually performs the maximum number of living donor liver transplants in the world, and there's a reason behind. In the initial part, we did try to have as many disease donations because the need is humongous, but we can't meet the needs. That is how the living donation came into picture. And in our country, we have a Human Organ Transplantation Act, according to which the living donor has to be from the family. He should be an adult, so ideal age is between 18 to 55 years of age. And what do you mean by a family? That means they should be either first degree, second degree, or third degree family. First degree relative is the spouse, children, siblings, parents, and grandparents. Second degree could be from the maternal side, paternal side, uncle, aunt, cousins. Third degree could be anything beyond this or in-laws. Ideally, they should fall into the family tree. So the Indian law does not allow any friend or a neighbor to be a donor. So the donor has to be from the family, they should be adult, they should be willing, they should be healthy. And then we investigate them for their liver health and for their fitness for surgery. And it happens in different stages. Once we are satisfied that the liver is good enough for donation and that they are fit for surgery, then only we accept them as a living donor.
One of the major concerns family have is regarding the safety of the donor in the liver transplant. So how safe is the liver transplantation for the donor?
So a living donor, the surgery in experienced center, in expert hands, it is quite a safe surgery. But I want to explain why liver donation surgery is safe, because one, we don't need the whole liver for our well-being if the liver is normal. What is required is 1/4 of the liver. And in the living donor, we make sure that we leave behind at least 30% of the liver. And that we do by doing the investigations, doing the scan, so that we know how much liver we are taking for the patient and how much liver we are leaving behind in the donor. Also, liver has a unique property to regenerate. So what we join into the patient and what we leave behind in the donor, it actually grows back to normal size. And what we leave behind is actually working well. So these are the two things why liver donation surgery is quite safe. But we make sure by doing a thorough evaluation of the donor, and that is why there is an age criteria. If the liver is fatty or if they have other comorbid conditions, we actually decline donation. And the safety of the surgery is immense. The risk of this surgery is less than 1%.
Doctor, it is very reassuring for the anxious family out there after hearing this. Since you mentioned there is some eligibility even for the donors as well. So can you elaborate on that?
So the donor has to be from the family. They should also be blood group compatible. So if a patient is O group, ideally they should belong to O group. If the patient is A group, just like any blood transfusion, the donor has to be A or O group. If it is B, then they should be B or O group. And if they are AB group, they are very lucky, they can take anybody's liver. So there should be blood group compatibility. The liver should be healthy in the donor. And ideally, we give about 0.8% of the body weight of the recipient, that liver mass. And this is, I think, for the donor to be eligible. And we also do a fitness for the patient. So evaluating the patient, we know that the liver is bad, but we make sure that the heart and lungs are good enough to receive the to withstand the surgery, and we do a thorough evaluation for the recipient as well.
Doctor, one of the most asked question is, can liver really regenerate? And if it does, how long is the recovery process for the donor?
So the liver regenerates quite fast in the first 2 weeks. In the first 2 weeks, about 70 to 80% of regeneration happens. And in the next 3 to 6 months, the whole liver regenerates. So from 1 kg of liver, supposing we take 600 grams and we leave behind 400, that 400 in the donor becomes 1 kg by the end of 3 to 6 months. Similarly, the 600 grams which is given to the patient, it might take a little longer period because they are suffering from disease, but in the initial 2 to 3 weeks, about 70 to 80% the liver grows back, and in the next 3 to 6 months, the whole liver regenerates. And this has been studied in a lot of papers and research, and this is how the liver grows back.
That's really fascinating to know that liver is the nature's organic comeback organ.
Yeah.
So ma'am, you mentioned in the start about 2 types of donors. One is the living and the other is the dead or the cadaveric donors. Can you explain about that as well?
So deceased donor is a brain dead donor who is ideally in a hospital setting and whose family agrees for donation, and if the liver is good, that organ is donated. For that, the patient is evaluated and put on a list, what we know as Deceased Donor Liver Transplant List or DDLT list. In our country, the whole country is guided by a national body, and in every state we have different regions where patients from different hospitals who are authorized to do transplants, they list their patients. So according to the blood group, patients have a sequence on the list, and according to their severity, they are given a score. So the liver is allocated to a patient who is waiting the most on the list, who are more sick, and in emergency situation there is a super urgent listing. So there is a body in Mumbai which is known as ZTCC, which actually overlooks the organ allocation, and the patients who are waiting on the list, depending on where the organ is available, they are allocated based on their waiting list.
Doctor, there are a lot of myths and concerns surrounding liver transplantation. So let's help
Sure.
our audience debunk those. Starting with, liver transplant is the last resort for treatment.
I would say no. Liver transplant is actually a life-saving operation. It should be offered at the right time, and it should never be regarded as the last resort.
Living donors become another patient in the family.
Yeah, that is a very good question and a myth which I want to bust, that living donors are actually healthy individuals and they are voluntary donors. They are actually heroes of our transplant department, and because of them they save lives. So they don't become a patient. In fact, they recover well and they are discharged within 5 to 6 days of surgery, and within 2 weeks of surgery they are ready to go back to their work. What we restrict is only for 3 months they should not be doing strenuous activities. So yes, they are not going to become another patient in the family.
Next is, liver transplant is an extremely dangerous surgery.
It is not a dangerous operation. Yes, it was regarded in the times past when it is a complex operation. Liver transplant is considered as the most complex operation in this world, and in experienced hands we are almost doing 300-400 transplants per center, and in our country itself we are doing about 3,000 to 5,000 transplants in a year. So it is not a dangerous operation, it is a complex operation.
Liver transplant cost is usually very high.
Liver transplant requires a good infrastructure and a lot of manpower, so it does have a cost to bear. But if you consider the cumulative cost of repeated hospitalization for these patients who have decompensation, I would say 3 or 4 hospitalization, the cost would exceed for a single lifetime procedure of transplant. So the choice is yours.
Last is, patients usually recover back to their normal life after surgery.
Yes, they do. Actually, after transplant, for the first 3 months, we have some restrictions about going out in public or crowded or polluted area because they receive immunosuppressants. So they are on triple drug immunosuppression in the initial part, and after 3 months, they are ready to go back to work. So I would say life after liver transplant is pretty much normal, except that they have to be in touch with the liver team with tests which are in the initial 3 months more often. As the time goes by, the tests are done once in 2 to 3 months. They can send us the report by email, fax, WhatsApp, and the team responds. And maybe when they are needed to come once in a year or 6 months, they can come and meet us.
Thank you, doctor. These answers will definitely help the audience differentiate the science from the myth.
Yeah.
Following up, ma'am, you just mentioned something about the recovery for a liver transplant patient. So how long that it usually takes, and is it differs from patient to patient?
So that is where I would like to dissipate this information, that timely transplant does wonders, and it is one of the key things which brings out the success. If a patient walks into my clinic and needs a transplant, the recovery is as early as 2 weeks. While a patient who is requiring repeated hospitalization and is in the ICU, he might require 2 to 3 weeks or maybe more to go back to home. But after discharge, if they tide over the initial period, by 3 months' time they are back to work. So a young person who is actively earning member in the family, he actually goes back to their usual duty, and they can do anything and everything what a normal individual could do. And this liver does not have a lifespan. We have got follow-up of patients of about 30 to 35 years. young patients who have had transplant have become individuals, and they have become adults and earning members, and they are carrying on with the liver. Only thing what you need to do is be in touch with your liver doctor.
So, ma'am, are there any advances in the surgical treatments and post liver transplant care which has improved the success rate over the years?
It has. In the days bygone, when we had immunosuppression which was not so well available, the success rate was not good. Every new program used to have problems. But now the perioperative care, the anesthesia care, the critical care, and the surgical techniques, they have improved so much that the success of transplant is to the tune of 90 to 95%. So we have a very good success rate. It is only because of the developments in surgical field as well as the critical care.
The success rates are quite impressive to hear.
Yeah.
Doctor, is there any message or any story of patient which you would like to share with our audience?
Yes, there are many to share, but one which I would like to speak about is a young boy who was airlifted and had acute liver failure, and he was only 10 years of age. He came to us in a deeply jaundiced comatose situation, and the mother donated a part of her liver, and he did very well. And now after 15 years, he is an engineer in a multinational company. He does trekking, he goes out for all sports activities, and I think this is an inspiration to us, and it gives us a lot of good vibes to see our patients doing well year after year.
That must be very rewarding as a doctor to hear such a successful story of a patient. So, doctor, how much alcohol is too much for the liver? And since everyone has a different idea of it, and what is harmless regarding it?
So I would say, as a doctor, as a transplant surgeon, there is no safe limit for alcohol. It should be a complete no for me. I don't have a level where I say it is safe to drink.
Painkillers, supplements are available over the counters, and people are recklessly popping them up. So is there any harm to the liver after these?
So I would say that paracetamol poisoning is less common in our country, but it is not unheard of. And as we are advancing and our lifestyle is changing, we are having less and less of physical activity, the food habits are changing, the young population, they are landing up with fatty liver and cirrhosis early on. And with the availability of these drugs like paracetamol and something like Ratol poisoning, which I was mentioning earlier, patients who are having problems with their psychiatry illnesses, they take this drug, it is made available over the counter, and they land up losing their lives. I would say there should be restrictions to their availability across the counter, and we should be, probably government should come up with some judicious laws so that these drugs are not made available over the counter.
Liver transplant requires a highly coordinated team and advanced infrastructure.
Sure.
So what does Lilavati Hospital and your team makes a perfect destination for liver transplant?
So at Lilavati Hospital, Mumbai, we have a 24/7 liver transplant team, and the team comprises of liver transplant surgeons who have more than 20 years of experience of dealing with such complicated cases. We have a dedicated transplant anesthetist, we have liver intensivist, we have hepatologist, we have trained OT and ICU nurses, we have 24/7 coordinators who are legal coordinators and clinical coordinators, and under one roof we have the other departments which are all required at some point of time in taking care of these patients. And I would say this is a destination which I would recommend to all my patients.
Doctor, one last message you would like to share with our audience regarding liver transplant?
I would say that there is a need to be more watchful and mindful of the diet and lifestyle. In today's world, we talk about preventive medicine. Even though I am a transplant surgeon and I advocate early transplant, the message which I want to give is prevent liver disease. The liver is one organ which is our engine. If it is at fault, it needs to be changed. But when it is damaged and it is early on, take care of the organ. Seek help when you can. Seek help when you have alarm signs. And when liver transplant is indicated, have it at the right time to have the best results.
Thank you, Dr. Vibha, for sharing your insight on such a complex yet life-changing subject. Thank you. The conversation which we got from out of the whole summary is that liver transplantation isn't just about the surgery, it is about the timing, the awareness, the evidence, and the science, and is giving patients a second chance at life. Thank you, doctor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
One key takeaway for the listeners is your liver is silent until it isn't. So don't ignore the warning signs. Don't take painkillers recklessly. And maybe rest your liver a little before your weekend plans, because your weekend plans may become your doctor's weekday plans. So until next time, stay healthy, stay informed, and be a little kind to your liver, because it is working overtime without ever asking for applause. Thank you for tuning in.